Welcome back and thank you for staying with KTN Prime. We continue with our conversation, and joining us is Odhiambo Ramogi, who's an economist, and of course we still have Alex Manyasi, who's a policy and governance expert. Good evening.
Good evening. My apologies. Yes.
No worries. I understand the traffic on Mombasa Road is crazy at this time.
Yeah.
So straight to it, from what the president said, we're at 14% in terms of tax rate. He plans to increase it by 16 by December, and of course to 22 by the end of his term. So let's start with that. What does it take, from an economical point of view, for those who do not understand, how do we move from one place to the other? What does it take?
So, number one, thank you for having me, and again, I'm glad to be here. Number one, it's a slight point of correction. It's not tax rate.
It's?
Revenue to GDP,
Okay.
The rate of revenue to GDP, which is now being translated to the rate of tax to GDP.
Okay.
You cannot essentially measure tax to GDP. So what then is the second best, it has imperfections, is the revenues that KRA, the real revenue that KRA collects. You take that as a percentage of the overall GDP of the country, and then now you get 14%. This 14% is lower than when he started off, because he started off when it was around 15.2%. And so we've gone down by at least 1 percentage point. That should tell you something. That even though he is increasing the tax rates, his collections are getting lower, which is as expected. I am sure I've been in this studio before, and I have said that their targets will not be met. They have not been met as yet. I think we were at 1.4 in February. And so the 4 remaining months, they are supposed to get around 1.5 trillion. I don't think that's going to happen. But the point that is happening is that, yes, we are overtaxed. Now, when you say that because we are having 14%, we are undertaxed and you want to move it to 22%, there are a few things that you're missing out. Thing one is efficiency in the collection of taxes. So if your collection processes are inefficient, naturally, even though your tax rate is high, you will still collect lower taxes. And that, I think, is a factor that he has considered. And that's why you saw some shuffling happening at KRA. Right now, there's a law in place that I think it's part of the Finance Bill 2024 that allows KRA to connect its eTIMS system, or to force one to connect their system to the KRA's eTIMS system to sort that efficiency issue. Thing two is governance. There are people in KRA, at least there were, that if you are well connected in government, you could make a phone call, and the items you are importing at Mombasa Port or any other port fail to attract the necessary duty. And so the tax rate is high, but the people it's targeting are your normal mwananchi. The high and mighty end up not paying taxes. And so that is where you find yourself that you have a high tax rate, but your collection is still low at 14%.
Yeah.
Thing two is the whole question of Laffer curve, and we've had this conversation, the Laffer curve effect, whereby high tax rates naturally lead to low collections. And let me paint a picture. The region that the president is comparing us to, which is Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, all have VAT at 18%. What are they collecting in terms of as a percentage of GDP? They are collecting around 12%. Because their tax rate is high, but their collection is lower. The people that we should compare ourselves to are the likes of South Africa and Nigeria. South Africa, VAT is at 14%. And I think payee is around 25% on average. They are collecting 20% of GDP, which is where the president wants to go. Nigeria, on the other hand, VAT is around 7.5%, with payee around 25%. Nigeria is collecting a whopping 25% of GDP. And that's where the president wants to take us. So now he desires that output, which we are seeing in South Africa and in Nigeria, without the necessary input, which is, if you lower your taxes, then you have a better compliance from the public. You have more people willing to pay taxes. What Lafakav says is at 0%, everybody wants to pay taxes, because after all, it's 0%.
Yeah.
At 100%, no one wants to pay taxes, because that means 100% of your income. And so you need to find a point of balance, a point of equilibrium, where you have a good tax rate that gives you good revenue, but at the same time there is a willingness, a general willingness from the public to pay that tax rate. And we've not found out what our G-spot in terms of that tax rate is. And so we are just playing around. Every day we are changing the tax rate, as it were. I heard, if you'll allow me, I heard the US ambassador yesterday saying that the investors, the US investors want one thing, and one thing only, that we have a consistent tax policy for 4 to 5 years, which means then we need to tie it to, say, the medium-term plan.
Yeah.
So that then for the next 5 years, we know this is the tax policy, and then it lingers and we follow through with it. And so for me, I think that would be, the president has good ambitions because we need to be self-sustaining as regards to revenue, but his approach will fail.
Okay, you've already established it will fail.
It will fail.
Okay, coming back to you, because you know the bill is undergoing public participation right now, and most Kenyans are saying it's an exercise in futility. After all, they have the numbers; it will sail through.
So that's the disaster with democracy, because you talk about democracy from a Mwananchi perspective, but at the same time, the same thinking, and then puts parliamentarians into being your representative, and unfortunately, being your representative, they will vote on things. So good practice will be that a process of public participation, and by the way, we do not have a functional public participation policy yet. That's partly part of the problem. So when we talk about public participation, it can mean anything. And that's why most of the cases that have gone to court on public participation have actually, those petitions have succeeded in court. Yeah. Because we have so many loopholes in such a way that it's more of a conveyor belt and ticking boxes to say that we sought people's opinion. But whether that counts at the end of the day is neither here nor there. So yes, I'm just using many words to say that when it gets to Parliament, more often than not, it will pass.
So clearly no one is fighting for Kenyans.
Yeah, unfortunately, you ceded your power to your representatives, and they have a vote which they utilize. And if they are minority, woe unto you, because then that will not count at the end of the day. Okay. However, if we had a good public participation policy and law in place, then there will be threshold. And therefore, then we will be having a different conversation, because your lawmaker will not be the alpha and omega of what happens in Parliament.
Okay. Yeah. Coming back to you, Dhiambo, I mean, look at what they're targeting. VAT on bread, spirits, cigarettes, M-Pesa, airtime, bank transfers, and all that. These are things, for example, if you look at M-Pesa, airtime, bank transfers, it builds financial inclusion. Tax that, it takes away the progress that we've made towards financial inclusion. Then where are we going as a country?
Yeah, no, it's a sad place to be, because on one hand, and allow me to be the devil's advocate here, on one hand, it's impressive what this government has achieved in terms of they came to power at a time when we were at the brink of being debt unsustainable. I mean, we still are, but 2 years down the line, they are still managing. And so somehow they have managed out of all these crazy tax policies to maintain a semblance of order, economic order, and it looks like they might yet survive this. On the other hand, their methods are very crude because that means then that they come to Kenyans and at every turn, they're saying, all right, Kenyans, we will not come to you the way the Ghanaians came to you and said, you have this amount of money in your bank account, we are going to freeze half of it and pay the debts we have. But at the same time, it looks like you are still going to suffer because at every turn, there's a tax waiting for you. There's a levy, there's a duty, there's VAT, there's pay, there's social health insurance fund, there's housing fund, and now there's a motor vehicle fund. And so for me, I think the bigger challenge is economic growth. But what you're discussing is even worse, is even greater, which is economic development. Economic development looks into the purview of socioeconomic development. In other words, do I have access to health services? And can I access these health services, one, in a timely fashion and in an affordable manner? Number two, do I have access to financial services? And are they within my reach, both economically, financially, and in terms of just being able to access them? And what then this spells is that there have been progress to ensure that I have access to education, I have access to health, I have access to financial services, and it doesn't matter the gender lenses, it doesn't matter whether it's a person with disability or youth. And that is progress. But you see, economic development is also pushed forward by economic growth. And where we are, I do not foresee growth happening quickly. I listened the other day during a launch in Mombasa. I think Ndini Nyoro was talking about CICO. So let me just explain what that is.
Yeah.
Capital in, CI is capital in and CO is capital out. So what they are trying to do is lock in capital. That whatever is in does not go out, and whatever is out tries as much as possible to come in, because that's now will spur growth. And so how do you lock in what is in? You increase the interest rate. And so that is why our interest rates are so high, infrastructure bond going for as high as 18%. Because they are trying to lock in that capital.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you attract what is outside by lowering tax rates. So that then, when I bring in money, I don't foresee the possibility of all my money being eaten by the taxes.
So ease of doing business.
Correct.
Okay.
So now, the challenge we are having right now is that, yes, we are locking in the little there is, which is now going to attract taxes, because infrastructure bonds are now going to attract taxes. But at the same time, we are not attracting capital which is out there. And for as long as you're not attracting foreign direct investment, growth is a pipe dream. And so, because the kind of growth we have right now is the kind of growth that is pushed merely by interest income for banks.
Okay.
When they lend to the government.
Okay, we have 2 minutes. Final thoughts.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I think the intentions by governments are good intentions that then look at making sure that our country is sustainable in terms of being able to pay debts and sustaining our livelihoods. However, I think, like I said in the beginning, the holistic approach to thinking about how to manage and grow the economy needs to take precedence. And that's something that I keep saying I have not seen any evidence, or for that matter, a lot of evidence that shows that we want to grow the economy, put young people to work, and therefore, by extension, get more people paying, and therefore get to a point where we can comfortably say that we are liquid enough to actually pay our debts and also sustain ourselves.
Okay.
Final thoughts. If we want growth and development, let's look at countries that are growing and developing in the region. and that is, I think the biggest economy right now is South Africa, followed by Nigeria. We have Ethiopia, and we have Egypt, still making a lot of progress. None of them is having this aggressive taxation policy that we are employing. And so we want the results, but the input is misplaced and mismatched. My thoughts would be we need to adopt the proposal by the US ambassador. Let's have a tax policy that is agreeable to as many Kenyans as possible, and then let's maintain it for a long term so that then the economy gets a feel of it and we give our investors some confidence.
All right, and of course the conversation continues even as we continue with the public participation, and we have to continue educating our viewers. So this debate will not end today. We will continue having this discussion in the coming days towards that deadline of May 28th, if I'm not wrong. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. Odhiambo Ramogi, economist, and of course, Alex Manyasi, policy and governance expert. And that's how we wrap things up here on KTN Prime. I'm Ashley Mazuri. Have a good night.